Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukee Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the table in the hall. If you've not picked up an agenda, please do so. It contains important information about the process. If you wish to be included in the mailing list for a decision, please add your name and contact information to the sign-up sheet located on the table in the hallway. If you wish to testify, also please fill out a yellow comment card. We will follow the basic format listed on the back of the agenda. It includes all of the hearing procedure steps. We may vary from the process based on the specific circumstance of each hearing. And next on the agenda, we don't have any minutes, so informational items.
I was just looking down at our forecast for future meetings, and I thought I'd just point this out now. There are a couple things on there that are not accurate. One was that we were anticipating a continuance on the Elk Rock Estates to that meeting, and actually I think what you will be doing tonight is opening the Elk Rock Estates hearing and continuing it to July 23rd. That when we did that forecast, we were assuming, we never updated that, given the news that the applicant had asked for a continuance to July 23rd. The other thing that's noted on the June 25th meeting is a joint session with the DLC, and actually we're going to bump that one out. And what is actually scheduled now is a joint session with the council, who wanted to meet with you regarding the cottage cluster and ADU report. So we had the consultant scheduled to come and present the material that they have discovered through their research on cottage cluster and ADUs, and the council would like to join you. So I don't know if we'll have them all, but I hear that 3 of them were interested. So anyway, that's some changes that are outlined there. So that's all I have.
Okay. Next, audience participation. Excuse me. This is an opportunity to comment on items not on tonight's agenda. If you wish to comment on an item that is on the agenda, there will be a time for comments after the presentation. Does anyone wish to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, can you come up and please state your name and address for the record?
I've just been told there are no more copies of agendas in the hallway, and there's a request for some.
Okay, we can make some.
Get some. Okay, great. We'll ask staff to make a few copies.
I don't have one.
Thanks. So can you
Hi,
pull
my
the...
name is Jean Baker.
Okay.
I live at 2607 Monroe. And while this is kind of part in, part out of the next item, our neighborhood would like to have been here, but we did not get notice. The city didn't notify the historic Milwaukee neighborhood. So we'd like to ask for a postponement so that we have time to get caught up on the issues and the facts and be able to represent our neighborhood in an intelligent manner.
Yes. We were told about that from staff before the meeting started, and I think the plan is that we will have a continuance. And do you want to explain a little bit, Denny?
Yeah, I think we're going to go forward with presentations tonight and testimony, and hold the record open for any testimony that neighborhood folks may want to make. We do a really good job of getting the materials posted to the website, and videos are available. So if people want to review all of that, it would be available shortly. So what we were talking about doing is continuing this to the June 25th meeting, so that we have a full amount of time to get the proper notice to the Historic Milwaukee Neighborhood Association. So you'll have, most of a month to,
With that format, will we have the opportunity to ask questions of the proponent? Maybe back again for that, or is it
yeah,
going to be
because
just staff?
the format would be, I think the applicant's rebuttal will happen after the neighborhood testimony. So if you had questions of the
So
applicant, you
that
could
they would
pose
be
them.
available for questions.
That would be the plan.
Yep.
All right.
So tonight, what we would do is go up through proponent and opponent and neutral testimony, and then continue it. If
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks,
But
Jenny.
I would add, I was terribly disappointed that it wasn't noted on our maps that our neighborhood is across the street from this proposal.
Yeah, it was just an oversight.
That was pretty close.
Kitty corner across the street, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to just note the shape of the Ardenwald neighborhood as well, coming down in this little point down there. It's kind of, I think we thought it was Hector Campbell when we started the process, and we're discovered to learn that it was Ardenwald. So this is an odd little piece.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
There are some
Yeah.
extra agendas too now. They have my notes on them, but they're...
All right. Thank you very much. So next item on the agenda is a public hearing. And as Denny mentioned, so we will open Elk Rock Estates following this, and then we'll go for a continuing.
July 25th.
Okay. But first is the Monroe Apartments building height variance. The public hearing on Monroe Apartments building height variance is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider application number VR-2019-003. The purpose of the application is to request a variance on property located at Monroe Street and 37th Avenue. The applicant has the burden of proving that the application is consistent with the City of Milwaukee's zoning subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, any applicable municipal code provision, and that the proposal conforms with all of the city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance sections where the criteria can be found.
Section 303, commercial mixed-use zones, Section 911.7, building height variance in the general mixed-use zone, Section 1006, Type 3 review, and Section 1011, design review meetings.
All testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address a criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow a response precludes an action for damages in circuit court. I'm going to go off the regular script and just make sure that folks understand what I just read. So if you wish to testify on this application, you've given me your yellow cards. Remember that you're addressing the application in front of us, which is the variance to allow a fifth floor on one of the buildings. It's not for approval of the 234-unit apartment project. That decision will come later after an application for the full project has been submitted. Testimony that's not directly related to the fifth floor variance and the specific criteria for the variance is not testimony that the Planning Commission can use to reach its decision. Staff will address the criteria during the staff presentation, and we'll leave a slide up on the screen that lists the criteria. I encourage you to address the criteria on the slide when you testify so that the Planning Commission can consider your comments. Any party with standing may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to City Council. Persons with standing are those who submit written comments or testify in person or sign the Planning Commission attendance sheet in the hallway. I will recognize those persons who have completed the testimony cards and given them to me. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record so they may be entered into the minutes. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria and to avoid repetition and irrelevant information. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. And we will be using the timer system today, so we'll explain that when it's time for public testimony. All right, so conflicts of interest in site visits. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain from this hearing?
No.
No.
Okay. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest?
No.
No. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report on any ex parte contacts?
No.
No.
Will any commissioner who has visited the site prior to this hearing please raise their hand? Did any of those commissioners who visited the site speak to anyone at the site or note anything different from what is indicated in the staff report for this application?
No.
Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the Planning Commission? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? All right, let's proceed to the staff report presentation.
Good evening, Vera Coleus, Associate Planner. All right. The overall project is a 234-unit multifamily development. This project was subject to a two-part approval process. Tonight is part one, which is the building height variance only. Part two, which will come later when an application is submitted, is for the overall project approval. The project permitting process, in a little more detail here. Again, part one is the variance to confirm a 5-story building height as part of the project. Part two could include a number of options. A potential variance to a fence or a wall height for the sound wall has been talked about. That could be a type 2 or a type 3, depending on what they submit. There will be a development review application, which is a type 2 application for this project. There's also a transportation facilities review that is wrapped into that development review. That part of that is the transportation impact study, and that includes city and peer review of the submitted traffic impact study. That has not been submitted. That will be submitted as part of the overall project, again, for part two. A number of meetings have occurred as part of this project so far. We've had 2 pre-application conferences that were attended by city staff, ODOT, and DEQ. There were NDA meetings, presentations, and Q&A sessions with both Hector Campbell and Ardenwald neighborhood associations. Both of those neighborhood associations recommended approval. They had additional comments that were submitted as part of your packet and as part of additional comments. And as we noted before, Historic Milwaukee will be afforded similar opportunity to submit comments and to hear from the applicant as well. Okay. This site is part of the central Milwaukee area that underwent an extensive public process whose purpose generally was to present a land use and transportation framework for development and circulation in central Milwaukee. The purpose of this planning process was to provide a cohesive vision for the area. This was all part of the Moving Forward Milwaukee process, facilitate future private and public investment that would meet community needs and desires, as well as achieving economic success for that area. The site in question, the McFarland site, as we've been colloquially calling it, was identified as an opportunity site for redevelopment. Residential and commercial uses would be permitted, including a height bonus for projects that include residential development. The general mixed-use zone, or the GMU zone, and other zoning amendments accompanied the adoption of this plan, and that was done in December of 2015 when it was adopted by council. The site itself, it's here and outlined in blue, is made up of 2 parcels. It's located on the vacant property at Monroe Street and 37th Avenue. The site is made up of 2 tax lots and has an area of 7.24 acres. It's bounded by Monroe Street, 37th Avenue, and Oak Street, as well as the Southern Pacific Railroad line. The surrounding area consists of a combination of uses, including single-family neighborhoods, a multifamily development, the Milwaukee Marketplace commercial development, and the Milwaukee Police Station is just out of the screen there to the northwest. The site, again, is zoned general mixed use, which permits multifamily development by right. The site does have a history of industrial use and hazardous material contamination. There's some detailed information in the staff report, but generally DEQ has been working on the site and in concert with the current and previous landowners for decades now, actually, as well as with the city. Long-term remedial controls to manage the site are in place, and the applicant has been in conversation with DEQ over the past many months to talk about permitting and development on this site. DEQ and city staff will be integral to reviewing any development that happens on this site. So the overall project, again, is a 234-unit multifamily development, including live-work units in 5 buildings. One of the proposed buildings is to be 5 stories, and using 2 building height bonuses that are provided in the code to exceed the 3-story base maximum height, residential use and green building. Per the code, buildings that elect to use both of those height bonuses for a 5-story building are subject to type 3 review, the building height variance in the general mixed use zone, which has specific approval criteria that we'll be discussing in a moment. The height variance request itself does not result in a greater number of units being allowed at the site than would be allowed without the variance. Minimum density required in the GMU zone is 25 units per acre. Maximum density permitted in the zone is 50 units an acre. For the site, the minimum number of dwelling units would be 180 units if it were to be built to the minimum density. The maximum number of dwelling units would be 361 units. With 234 units, the proposed project results in a density of about 32.5 units per acre, well within the range of allowed density for the zone. Again, the GMU height variance is in 911.7. There are 4 specific approval criteria that we would be reviewing this project for. The first one is that the proposed project avoids or minimizes impacts to surrounding properties. These are a couple of cross-sections that were supplied as part of the applicant's material to give a sense of where that 5-story building, which you see to the left of the screen. In cross-section, the top cross-section shows the clubhouse, proposed garages, and then 37th Avenue. So it's sort of it's cutting it looking north on the site. The lower section shows the train, the garages, the 5-story building again, common playgrounds, 3-story apartments, and Monroe Street. So that's that section kind of looking west. Again, the GMU zone has a base height allowance of 3 stories or 45 feet. With a bonus for providing residential or green building elements as part of the project, a building height of 4 stories or 57 feet would be permitted by right. With both height bonuses, height goes up to 5 stories, 69 feet, through a variance as required, which is why we're here tonight. The requested variance would allow building 1 to be built at 5 stories with a height as proposed of 61 feet 6 inches. Potential impacts are visual impacts to the surrounding residential development as well as a result of that 5-story design. Building 1 is sited toward the interior of the site, kind of towards the back, approximately 150 feet from Monroe Street, where a multifamily development is currently located just north, and 180 feet from 37th Avenue, where there are single-family homes located just east of the site. At that horizontal distance, Building 1 appears it doesn't appear like a 5-story building because it's far enough away from those surrounding streets and those neighborhoods across the street. The site also slopes downward between those streets, so the 5-story building is being located on a lower portion of the site to kind of minimize that impact of the additional height. This is a view of the project from the entrance that's proposed at 37th Avenue. And so you can see that 5-story building. You see the 5-story building sort of behind the clubhouse and the proposed garages. The second approval criteria is that the proposed project is creative, exceptional in quality, detailing, and creates a positive and unique relationship to other nearby structures or open space. As proposed, the project and the building itself, of course, improve a vacant and contaminated site that has been vacant and contaminated for decades. It's been designed with high-quality materials, lower pitched roof to maintain the residential character of the surrounding area. The development steps down from the street, so to blend in with the surrounding neighborhood. So you'll have the highest building is sort of in the middle, and the three-story buildings are the ones that are on Monroe Street and 37th Avenue. The additional height provides more space for landscaping. So by going up, they don't have as much horizontal construction, so they're able to provide more landscaping, more open space as part of the development. And these are some renderings that show that the five-story building itself, so you have a sense of what the proposed architecture and the design is going to look like. The applicant will have a lot more architectural detail to speak about, of course. The third approval criteria is that the proposal will result in a project that provides public benefits or amenities beyond those required by the base zone, increase vibrancy, help meet sustainability goals. Some of the key benefits of allowing for the five-story height provide some connectivity and transition between the commercial, multifamily, and single-family residential area. So you have a high, intense commercial use, you have an active railroad, you've got multifamily uses, single-family uses, so we've got this building and this development kind of nestled in between all of these other uses. Again, the additional height allows for additional plantings to contribute to the tree canopy, the goal of 40% of tree canopy in the city. By having some extra space on the property, we're able to provide more space for more plantings on the site. And the green building piece contributes to our sustainability goals in the city by building it to a green building standard. And the Energy Trust of Oregon program is the one that was mentioned in the application and would be a requirement. They would have to show certifications and so on as part of their building permit process. Here's another drawing from the application. You can see there's a multi-use path that is proposed as part of the overall project. So this is kind of the corner of the railroad is sort of off to the left. There's a multi-use path proposed. This is 37th Avenue, kind of running north-south there on the right. And you can see there's some proposed garages, and there's the five-story building kind of tucked in towards the back from this view. The final criterion is that the project ensures adequate transitions to adjacent neighborhoods. The site itself is a transition point between, again, intense commercial site, multifamily development, and the single-family neighborhoods. Mitigation measures for the building itself include site landscaping, locating Building 1 towards the west of the site away from the adjacent neighborhood, so it's not right on the street. The approval of the fifth story allows more efficient use of the site, so they have more flexibility in their site planning, including preservation of open space that contributes to that transition. It's another drawing from the applicant's materials. This view is looking west from the intersection of 37th Avenue and Monroe Street. And so you can see the three-story buildings that will be along the street with the five-story building towards the back in the middle there. Part of this review required the Design and Landmarks Committee to review the project and provide comments and recommendations to the Planning Commission. On May 6th, the DLC reviewed the project in an open public meeting. The DLC voted to recommend approval of the height variance and recommended that the Planning Commission consider the following during that review. There was an attachment in your packet that had the official kind of letter from the DLC. But the recommendation from the DLC, again, recommending approval, but that the Planning Commission would discuss a potential requirement that the applicant break up the three large gable ends of the building to further reduce the massing and visual impacts of those five-story elevations on surrounding properties. An example was provided as part of their comments that perhaps each large gable end could be redesigned with two gable ends. Per the DLC recommendation, the team, the applicant, explored reducing the main roof pitch down from an 812 to a 512. So you can see on the right, or on the left section is as proposed, And to the right, they've lowered the gable ends by almost 8 feet. So they've reduced the overall height of the building itself. The applicant will describe in greater detail sort of that design decision and so on, but they did respond to the DLC recommendation, so that's available to you for review as well. Staff's recommendation for the height variance itself is to approve the application and adopt the recommended findings of approval. The Planning Commission has some options this evening. Of course, with the fact that the Historic Milwaukee NDA was not given notice, really continuing the hearing is the option for this evening. But that said, the staff recommendation of approval stands, but obviously keeping the comment open to see what the Historic Milwaukee NDA would say is required and is necessary. This slide just summarizes the height variance approval criteria so that we can refer to those as comments are made or as testimony is presented to the Planning Commission. But that concludes the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here and has a presentation as well to be able to present to you in greater architectural detail, I'm sure, than what I just
Okay.
glossed over.
Well, thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Vera before she goes?
I do.
Okay.
Did the planning staff at any time have conversations saying, well, all you have to do is make them all 4-story buildings, you can get in the amount of apartments that you need to make it financially suitable, and then you don't have to go through this process?
During the pre-application conferences, the original pre-app conference that we had in 2018 did not show a 5-story building, in fact. And when they subsequently worked on the site plan and came back for a follow-up pre-app conference, the 5-story building was part of it. Obviously, the applicant was made aware of the process and what was going to be required for the 5-story building, that 4 stories was available by right. The 5-story building did include this additional hoop of review, and the applicant chose to go through the hoops to be able to
keep the
allow-
3-story ones and then
to
make
keep
them
the 3s
5-story?
and have the 5-story building. It was ostensibly important to them to maintain for the site design. Question that they can certainly answer, but they were well aware of what was available by right for them and that there was additional review, discretionary review for the 5-story buildings, yes.
And then with the redesign, does that make it that the height is only 61 feet to the top of the roof? Since you said it was 8 feet lower, the maximum height 69.
I'm sure I can't see what those heights are. Is that true?
I can ask that of
We
the
can ask the
applicant.
They can confirm that for you, yes, sorry, yeah.
No, that's fine.
Yep.
Anyone else with questions for staff? Nope.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We can put that slide back up, but I'm going to fire up their presentation.
Oh, great, okay.
We have one that addresses it as well, so.
All right. And then, last question for you, Vera, right now. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items included in the meeting packet and what we have in front of us?
What you have in front of you are the comments that were submitted after the packet was posted. So you see a comment from Chris Ortolano, a comment from Bernie Stout. There's also a letter from the Ardenwald Johnson Creek Neighborhood Association. And there's also a memorandum from Lancaster Engineering that was submitted by the applicant this afternoon. That's in response to the ODOT comments. ODOT comments made a statement about going from 3 to 5 stories was adding density to the site, and they wanted to clarify that, that in fact, it doesn't. It's just a different way of designing the project. But Lancaster Engineering submitted some comments regarding the transportation briefly. It's not the full TIS, of course, but they wanted to make sure that they addressed that because ODOT made that comment, and it was an error. I don't think ODOT was aware of the code and sort of allowing 3, 4, or 5, depending on the variance process or what was
see.
available by right. So they wanted to make sure that that was clarified.
Okay.
Again, I'll let the applicant clarify that even more, but
Okay.
those are the 4 comments that were submitted.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now we will have comments from the applicant or their representatives. Come on up and remember to state your name and address for the record, please.
Ready for us?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. Tom Meservey with Johnson Development Associates. I'm the president of JDA. I live in Mill Valley, California. Do you want to go ahead and give your introduction?
Good evening, Dean Masakawa with LRS Architects at 720 Northwest Davis, Suite 300, Portland, Oregon.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Travis and Planning Commission members. As I mentioned, excuse me, also a little sick. Tom Meservey, I'm the president of JDA. Unfortunately, one of our local team members is out with a medical issue, and he leads this project for us and cannot attend. So I'm going to do my best to cover on his behalf this evening. But we're excited to be here, and we appreciate your time this evening. Staff did a great job of presenting our project. We want to just give a little more color into it without trying to be repetitive, and then we'll have our project architect talk a little bit more about some of our architectural decisions that we made, but happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have. So as mentioned, Johnson Development Associates, we are a national developer, family-owned and operated. We own a variety of real estate. On the multifamily side, we've developed about 7,000 apartment units, about 22 million square feet of industrial space, and about 6 million square feet of storage space, and about 650 hotels across a couple different brands. So a lot of expertise in what we do, and national diversity. As I mentioned, we are family-owned. That extends into the values in terms of how we develop, how we operate, what we do, over 30 years of experience. It's important to us that the developments that we design and create are a positive impact not only to the residents that we serve, but also to the broader communities. We are fully committed to excellence in what we do, so we just have a little sampling of some of the awards we've won. Those are representative of both environmental green design awards as well as community service and partnership awards. As I mentioned, we do a variety of different projects. You'll see on this screen that there are a variety of different designs, and really what we wanted to show you here is just a representation of the type of projects we do, but you also see that there's a wide variety of designs here. And what really that shows is when we come into a city or community, we want to make sure that what we are doing complements the existing use, fulfills the vision that the city has, and that may vary. The project on the top left is in downtown Seattle, so a zero lot line urban project. And then the one on the top right is a suburban project in Northern California, so a very different design, a lot of similarities there to what we're envisioning in Milwaukee. Other projects are another podium project in Northern California, the bottom left, and then a beach project in Southern California on the bottom right. So project background, the city team did a great job, so we'll go through this relatively quickly, but again, happy to answer any additional questions. I think what's most important here are a couple points. When we've been involved with this project for almost 3 years, and before we did any design work, we met with the city staff to make sure we understood the history of the site. We know there's been a long history here in terms of what the city wanted to see on the site. We wanted to make sure we understood that vision before we put any pen to paper here. It's really important for us that not only are we trying to fulfill the city's vision, but we're complementing the existing uses, making sure that our project is going to be a great addition to the community. As the city team mentioned, we know there's been some misunderstanding about the 5-story variance being an opportunity to increase density. I think it's really important, as city staff mentioned, that without any variance, we could put, by code, 50% more units than we're proposing here. She also mentioned, and Commissioner, you asked the question, kind of why are we doing this? Because you're absolutely right. It is an extra step in the process, but we feel it's really important to make sure that we're designing the best project. What this allows us to do, and our architect can speak to it more gracefully than I can, but it allows us to minimize any potential impact to the neighborhood by creating a lower height, 3 stories instead of 4 stories closer to the street. It allows us to maximize things that are important to what we feel a community and also to our residents. So things like open space, landscaping. We've heard in some of our discussions with the neighborhood that they really want to stress on-site parking, so we dramatically exceed the code on things like on-site parking. So for us, it allows us to design what we feel is the best project, even though it is, as you were alluding to, another hoop. But again, we just want to reiterate that this process does not allow us increased density. We could put 4 stories across the entire project except right against the street and allow us to have a lot more density, but we wanted to do what we felt was best for the project. It also allows us to do a financially viable way to put in an elevator into our project. We think that's important to appeal to a wide variety of potential residents, handicapped, mobility impaired, or there's just some residents that really like to have an elevator. They like that ability to get up. It allows, on a traditional suburban project, you just have access to the ground floor if you have any of those mobility issues. So this allows you to have a variety. Of course, you'd be able to access all five stories with an elevator, and that 5th story allows it to be economically viable for us to do it. As I mentioned, we've been involved for over 2 years in this process. It's important. We have local team members. I'm based in Northern California, but we work with local design team members to make sure that we're not coming in and have any perception that we're coming in as an out-of-state developer. We want to make sure that we have a local team. So Cynthia, who's here, not presenting tonight, but she's a City of Milwaukee resident and has helped us navigate this process. As city staff mentioned, we've also met with the 2 neighborhood associations. Did not realize the 3rd, but we wanted to make sure that we came out and spoke to the neighborhood groups, and we're very grateful that both neighborhood associations wrote a letter of support in terms of the 5-story variance. With that, I will turn it over to our architect, Dean.
Good evening. I won't go over the entire project since staff mentioned laid it out for us, but I will focus on the 5-story building and some of the decisions that were made to get us to where we are now. So the first slide you see here is buildable area. As you can tell, about 1/3 of the site is a brownfield, and so that does not allow us to have living units on that portion. So there's our first hurdles. We're trying to condense our living units onto the other 2/3 of the site. Reducing the visual impact. So our 5-star is located in the center of the site. By doing so, we've pushed it as far as we can from Monroe Street, and so the visual impact is minimized. Also, the site does kind of slope down or bowl down as you go toward the railroad tracks. So that helps reduce the height. Along Monroe Street, we kept the 3 stories to keep that step-down effect. So you have your 1 or 2-story neighbors, Monroe Street, 3 stories, and then our 5-star. Now, we kept it from off the railroad track because for livability, nobody wants to rent the apartment that's right along the railroad tracks. Next slide. So by increasing the density or having the extra story for that building, that allows a few things. Here, it actually opens up the site, and we're able to exceed the minimum open space by about 20,000 square feet. The buildable area, some of the buildable area is given up for parking. So there's 2 locations where we had to reduce our buildable area, and it's going to be Monroe Street for parking, 37th Street for on-street parking, because the sidewalk is actually built on our site. And we've also given up 12 feet of site along the railroad for that bike path there. So again, once again, we're squeezing down our site. By adding that extra story on the 5th floor, it opens up the site for parking ratio. So the project exceeds the minimum. I believe the minimum is about 0.5 or 1.26. So more parking for guests, less congestion for on-street or people coming to the site. It also allows us to reach our tree canopy coverage of 40%. And as Tom mentioned, our density is only 234 units. So we're about 131 less than the maximum. You've seen this already. This is another, just put together the 4 views. The top left is a view from Monroe and 37th looking into our site. And as you can notice, because the site dips down about 6 feet or so, that far-story building is it really disappears behind our 3 stories. Top right, again, you will just see the 3-story on Monroe. Bottom left, this is at our entry on 37th. You can see it behind the clubhouse, and on the bottom right at the train tracks, then there's obscured from the garages also. So looking at the building, I want to talk a little bit about the form of it. So connecting the history, this was an old mill site, and the idea here was to use the concept of the modern barn. So if you think about that, it's really dictated by that silhouette of the gable end. You know, not a flat roof. We wanted to keep a gable to keep in context with the neighbors. So if you go to the next slide. This has the dimension on it, and I believe, Commissioner Hammer, you wanted to know that. Going from our 8/12 main roof pitch down to a 5/12 drops that ridge about almost 8 feet. 7'10" is what it says on the slide here. So almost a full story by doing that. And we took a look at it, and we believe that it still meets the criteria or follows the modern barn concept with that silhouette, but then reduces it down for the neighborhood. And here is the, again, view from the inside of the site. Again, 512. So it's a little bit about materials. I think that was one of the questions that you mentioned that we elaborate on. We'd be looking at permanent. It's made up of cementitious lap siding and also cementitious panel siding. So permanence and materials, and also that relates to the neighborhood and is a residential quality. Thank you.
So that concludes our presentation. We are happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to start over here. You're going to have to wait for a minute.
That's fine.
Can you elaborate on the sustainability goals?
Sure. So we're still working with the city staff, but there are the requirements within the variance, the Energy Trust Oregon. So it will be one of the certified programs that we utilized. We haven't determined exactly which one that will be, but so there's a certification. But then in all the projects that we do, we make sure that we're using sustainable design. Both benefits the residents with lower utility bills, better insulation, but then also provides a really sustainable long-term development for us as owners.
Okay, but no hard goals set or criteria set? We have not decided the exact program, but it would be a certification program, one of the ones listed within the city's criteria. Okay.
How much permeability is there on the bike path? Because I see that it's kind of behind the garage, or the garage is. So how many access points, or how kind of hidden will much of that path be from visibility?
So we're working through that with the city staff right now. That's really our next phase of design for the project, in terms of exactly how that fluidity and interaction will work.
Yeah. So
And then,
let's keep that's a good informational item, but we want to make sure we're talking about the
Variance criteria.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so you didn't have any objections to the changes that were proposed by our Design and Landmarks Committee with the reduced height?
No, they asked us to consider an option, and so we wanted to make sure that we were being responsive. We're excited about both options, so we wanted to, the way I think it was worded was to present an option to the Planning Commission, but we're excited about both. As Dean mentioned, we think both are true to the architectural form, so we're happy to do either one.
Perfect, thank you.
No questions. I just want to make sure that you are going to apply those green standards to all the buildings and not just to the 5-story one.
Yeah, that's correct. It would be a project certification.
Okay.
Good question. Any additional questions at this point before we open it up for public testimony? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So in The order of the public hearing is testimony in support of the application. So we'll hear testimony in support first, then opposed, and then neutral. So I'm going to call up Allison Reynolds first, and we're going to start the timer, so you have 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
She's part of the application.
Okay, part of the application team.
Fill those out in case you needed them, so.
Okay, yeah. Jesse Henry?
Same.
Okay.
Yep.
And Dean, okay, yeah, you just,
Everything in support.
what about Tom?
That's me. I'm happy.
That's you, the Tom. Okay, all right, okay. Okay, David Aschenbrenner, come on down. And you know how this works, right? You have 3 minutes, and it starts flashing at what point? I can't remember.
1 minute, I think.
1 minute? Okay. But you know
But
the drill.
as chair of NDAs, we typically give them double the amount of time.
Oh, is that right? Okay, sorry about
It's
that.
not a sitting rule, but it happens to be a rule that
I'll keep to that
we
rule.
seem to
I
follow.
will,
Okay.
I will do my best not to use that much time.
Okay, thank you
Seeing
very
as we're
much.
just here to talk about one piece of the project. First, my name is Dave Aschenbrenner. I am chair of the Hector Campbell Neighborhood Association. You have our letter on file. I just wanted to reiterate a couple things. First, thanks for the opportunity. At our neighborhood meeting, we had a presentation by the developer. It was very well taken. To this point of this one, the changes in the roof line, we see that as a positive. There's nothing wrong with that in our books. If they can adjust the roof line, that just is that much better, makes it that less. We would definitely like to have 3 stories on the perimeter as opposed to 4 stories. That definitely fits in better with that stepping from the commercial area down into the neighborhoods or from the apartments into the neighborhoods. Green certification is always a good thing. So realistically, I don't have a whole lot more than that because we were just talking about the one thing. I am going to be talking with staff and the developers, Tom and them, about other concerns that we have regarding other issues on this related to this site and around this site. It's not just the impact of the sites, it's what's around it also. So you will see me back at the next full-blown meeting on the full development, and hopefully we can address a lot of those issues at that time. Just want to remind people that this is a private property development. It is not a public property development. Public property developments go through much more involvement, hearing-type discussions. There's a lot more process with public development than there is with private. And like they said, they could do 4 stories outright. And we're happy to look at this with being 3 stories and some of the improvements that they're doing on the interior, because this site has been what it is for as long as I've been here. So anyway, thank you very much. I'll leave it at that. How much did I use?
You. We didn't even
4
start.
minutes.
But
Not even
wait,
4.
hold on 1 second.
Oh, no, you're not going
Does anyone have any
Grill
questions
me.
for Mr. Aschenbrenner?
Does that have to pertain to this hearing?
It has to pertain to this hearing. Yes, Greg, that's hilarious. No, if not, okay, thank you very much for your time.
David.
Okay. So then I have 2 left, and I have Bernie Stout, who is neutral, and Jean Baker didn't.
I'll postpone.
You'll postpone yours. Okay. All right, great. So 1 left for tonight, and that's Bernie Stout. If you could come on up.
Hello, Bernie Stout, 4647 Southeast Ada Lane. I don't know whether to ask you guys or ask staff. First of all, public meetings, if they would advertise it in a pilot and publish it on the neighborhood associations, just like when they had the meeting for this, it wasn't there, more people would show up. So is there going to, as David pointed out, public, private, will there be any opportunity in the future for the public to come and make comments?
Yes, so this is the,
This is just about the variance.
just about the.
I realize
The
that.
floor, yes.
But it hasn't been made clear anywhere. Does the public get to participate at all?
In the final decision process. Denny, can you,
Yes, what we expect to see is an application that meets the type 2 decision process, which is actually a process where the decision is made by staff and is then noticed to the community. There is then an opportunity to appeal that staff decision if someone has a problem with it to the Planning Commission, who would then be the final decision maker. But that initial decision is a staff-level decision unless there are other variances that would be required. Do you have anything you want to add?
I just wanted to note that it is a planning director's decision with full public notice. So the NDAs will receive a referral for that application. All three NDAs, thank you, Ms. Baker, for sure, as well as notice will go out to folks within 300 feet of the project, just like for this one.
Right.
So there's full public comment as part of the type 2
Okay.
review process, yes.
Thank you. So the notice goes out before the decision. We collect the decision, or collect the comments from everyone, make a decision. That all becomes part of the decision package. And
Anyone that if the notice of decision is issued, anyone that has submitted comments on the project would receive a copy of that notice of decision, and that establishes the ability to appeal that decision if they wanted to, and the appeal authority would go to the planning
So
commission.
this isn't it then?
So
I mean, the pervasive view in the neighborhood is this is the night and this was it, and there won't be any more.
well, no, it's not. But
Okay.
it's possible. It's the only public hearing,
Yeah,
where there is a forum.
right.
But there is definitely notice that would go to the neighbors, and comments would come in to staff to make that decision. If everybody was happy with the decision, it may never be
I
appealed.
put down neutral, and I applaud these people for showing up and even working on that bizarre a lot and all the other parts that come into it. But anyway,
okay,
I think that's enough.
okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for asking that, because I don't think we could have made that clearer for everybody earlier.
Okay, so,
Can I make a motion to continue the
That'd be
hearing
great.
with, while leaving the public comment section open?
thank you for the motion.
Until,
Until
Do we have a
June
date?
25th.
June 25th at 7:30 p.m.
Is that a date certain?
Yes, and it's a time certain because we have a joint meeting with the council prior to it.
Scheduled, okay.
So, yeah, date certain, June 25th at 7:30 PM.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for continuance until June 25th, 7:30 PM. A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearings continue to June 25th, 7:30 PM. Thank you.
I did do that at the right time, right?
It was great. Okay.
In fact, that was kind of
Thank you all for coming,
Dragging on any.
and please tell your neighbors as well. Look forward to more public testimony on the 25th. Yes, Vera.
I could just, through the chair, so notice will go out to the historic Milwaukee NDA to provide comment, as we did for the other ones, and apologies from staff for the oversight. It was unintentional. It was unintentional. I will talk to the pilot people and see if we make the date. I'm not sure what their publication date is, but I will do my best. I will do my best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So,
We have one more thing, so please exit quietly.
yes.
So give me 2 seconds.
So now we're moving on to just open up Elk Rock Estates. So, let's see, sorry. got a little lost here. Okay, the public hearing on Elk Rock Estates is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider application files. And I have to read all of this? No.
I was looking at just for that question.
Read it fast.
Yeah, well, you could probably just do it by the title and.
Okay, all right. So the public hearing on Elk Rock Estates is called to order. The purpose of the hearing is to consider files, 5 land use files. The applicant has the burden of proving that the application is consistent with, I gotta read all this, okay.
And they've requested that.
The applicant has requested that we continue the hearing to
July 23rd.
July 23rd. So I will take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the Elk Rock Estates, NR-2018-005 LC 2018-001 WG 2018-001 VR 2018-014 VR 2018-015 to be continued to July 23rd.
Excellent. I have a motion. I have a second.
I will second that.
A second. All those in favor of continuing the hearing on July 23rd? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Continue to July 23rd. That was a little awkward.
This is awesome. I thought I was going to be here till 10:30 tonight.
And next, we have work session items, but we have none.
No, we were going to be here till 10:30 talking about current planning.
Can I bring up something just real
Well,
quick?
how about you do that after we do planning department other business?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And then we'll do
No other business.
no other business. Now, yes, planning commission committee updates, discussion items.
With our meeting with council and talking it over with some of my neighbors, and I have a feeling not being in that CPAC room makes it it still seems very confusing and convoluted, and I don't know how to flush that out, or if that's going to get flushed out with the CPAC.
A little more detail?
Yeah.
So I think that people want to voice their opinion about this, and
About this meaning,
I'm sorry,
the housing policy.
The housing policy.
Okay.
Thank you. There just hasn't been quite a forum yet to discuss or an open forum to discuss all of this, and some people that I talk to feel like council's already made up their mind on which way that they're going, or all of this is kind of set in a way. So I'm asking the question, could we reassure the audience or reassure myself when I talk to my fellow residents that.
Yeah, this is ultimately going to be a legislative decision, but you will make the final decision after a public hearing, after we package everything to go forward. So what we're going through is a series of work sessions that are leading up to a public hearing. That said, there's nothing preventing the Planning Commission or council members, for that matter, to take testimony prior or as part of the review of the policies. And as I say all that, I'm looking at a schedule that's pretty tight. We've been asked to try to deliver a product by the end of the year for everything, for the entire plan. We have a work session on the housing policy scheduled for the Planning Commission on June 11th. There's 2 other hearings on June 11th, but they should be relatively easy, I hope. We could, if you wanted, if you know people that want to come and testify, we could open that up and take comments from folks if there was a desire to do that. I think part of our hope at that meeting was it would give the commission a chance to dig in and have deeper discussion about those policies. CPAC last week spent I mean, I was thinking after we'd had the other meeting that it was going to be a pretty simple discussion, but we went through them policy by policy, and they recommended changes to everything. We didn't get through them all. So we did a switch in the schedule so that we're having another CPAC meeting next week and looking at the last two sets of policies. It sort of depends on what you guys want to do, too. We're scheduled right now to take the final package of policies to the council on July 16th to try to pin them down like we have with the other two sets. And pin down is, in essence, a temporary pin down. It's a pin
Right.
down to package them all and then take them to hearing.
Well, and it's a pin down as we also prepare to go through and check to see which influences each other as we look at all the
The
different
synthesis
goals. The
stage.
synthesis stage,
Correct.
right? So that's part of the pinning down, is so that we can then have stuff to synthesize, but then there'll be some iterations from that process.
And, I mean, if folks want, we haven't really invited comment other than the comment at the open house, although comment at any time would be welcome, and we would distribute it to the CPAC, to the Planning Commission, to the council.
And I know that, most of the NDAs take a summer break. At least I know two of them do. And so it'd be kind of nice, if the person that lives in that neighborhood would maybe show up to the NDA and maybe want to discuss it. I know it's a little late in the game, but, and then maybe the NDAs could submit a letter for comment or.
And you're talking just on the housing pieces?
Yeah, just on the housing.
Not for any of the other goals?
I think that most of the other goals have kind of been flushed out and everybody kind of gets them. This housing thing is it's not difficult for everybody to grasp their mind about, but there's a resistance to change. There's a resistance to the language that's in there. It's just, to flush all that out so that, everybody has an opportunity to kind of weigh in a little bit on this. So that the pitchforks and the torches don't come screaming out at some point in time.
It might be a good time to try to figure out a way to get comments, because David is, in the next couple of days, going to be trying to prepare the staff report for your June 11th meeting, which will mean, and he's going to have like 24 hours to package the next set of CPAC comments to put in there and then send out to you guys next week. So but it might be good to send something out in advance of that.
So one thing that I've wanted to do, and I've been reminded this past week, is we had talked about having a meeting with the land use chairs of the NDAs. I mean, this was a while ago, and everyone's like, oh, that's a good idea, we should really do that, and then we never did it. So I just wonder if right now might be a good time to consider that as a potential practice, as a way that we can, build communication channel. I mean, they're the land use chair for the NDA. So they, are communicating about land use issues among all the other things that are on the agendas for the NDAs. So, that could be one way to try to get some information to and from the process at this stage. We could maybe try to squeeze it in. If folks think that's a good idea,
Yeah, and because I didn't go all the way down to the bottom of the agenda, I guess I did not see the tentative schedule for June 11th. But even if you give notice today and they have until June 11th to comment, most of them will not have met.
Right.
And so, and I know that June is probably the last month until summer break, and I don't know if there's some urgency or some importance, but maybe we could still circulate out the information and have a meeting with I know our schedule is really tight, but meet with the land chairs and see if they get feedback from their neighborhood about it.
And we could, again, we can still take comment, even if we go forward and sort of pin things down, we can still modify. So it's not as if pinning down is the final step.
Yeah.
Because we haven't done the hearing. We got to do
Right.
hearings.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will take that back to the people that have been talking to me, and I'll say, hey, you know what, there will be an opportunity for public comment,
But-
even if it's all the way at the end.
But I think right now, we're more than happy to take any comment that people have, but it would just be sort of unless we set up some system like this, which I think we're happy to do, we didn't formally put hearings before the pin-down process. That would,
Okay.
we were counting on our kind of open house or our town hall forum as the way to kind of generate that initial.
Well, and so some of the worry from some of the people I talked to is that, hey, at our town hall, we talked about this and it wasn't on the list.
Yeah.
And so that's why people are nervous that council has already made up their mind on, what's the list going to be, because, every table had talked about home ownership, and there wasn't really anything about, a home ownership program and the affordability, and that's why I brought it up at that time. And so
Okay.
I just wanted to express the concern that I'm hearing out there.
It's good to know. We'll see what we can do.
Thank you, Denny.
Yeah, so the meeting that we had at CPAC the other night, it's very clear that decisions have not been made because everything was redlined. It was a painful process and, necessary painful to kind of go through and get all these comments. So, no decisions have been made and there's still refining and editing, and we're very much in the process.
Yeah, and one of the other comments was that we didn't get sent. I don't know. I choose not to receive mailings from the Planning Commission, but we didn't get the list of the equity and the affordability, and I forget what the other two are, but it doesn't matter. And so people that I were talking to, they were like, well, what's the list? What we don't even know what the list is. And that was in the packet that City Council had received, but we didn't receive a packet, right? Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think we failed in getting that.
But that's okay. All I'm saying is that, maybe just sending them an email with the list to the NDA leaders if you want to open up that can of worms, or once we get it maybe even settled, because it doesn't even sound like that it's even close to being settled yet.
Do I need to redo my comments that I submitted earlier today?
Yeah. I haven't looked at your comments yet, but I did print them out. Joseph, you might comment on the approach that you took.
Oh. So I took the list of draft policies, the list that you're talking about, and I added 4 columns, one for each lens, and I commented in the whole matrix of how each draft policy addresses each of the 4 lenses, so it was extensive.
It looks,
but
I haven't read it. It looked great. But we have the policies that are kind of being the policies are all being morphed, so it may affect how you responded. But
it sounds like it may.
David is charged with making sense out of everything right now. And,
is it like a 4 or 5 star kind of rating on each one that you like? Or?
No, it's a summary. It's like a little essay for each one, almost.
Oh, okay. All right.
Wow.
He was doing staff's work, and we totally appreciate it.
Throw it to a planner, we'll just do weird symbols.
There you go. That's where you get the stars.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg, for bringing that up. And I think that people should feel free to reach out, and try to get informed of where we're at in the process and share information.
Does CPAC have a charge before our work session Is there something they're supposed to do yet?
Monday, right?
The CPAC is meeting
They
Monday.
mean, so that is when they'll try to finish through their policy
housing
review?
review.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
I mean, at least this, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the idea.
A lot of meetings
Yeah.
going on. Okay.
Poor Kim.
But it's good stuff. And I really do want to think about a way to meet with the NDA land use chairs, because I think that's something that we can think about doing maybe once a year at least, it seems like, a good idea to have that. And so depending on what people think about the summer, I mean, the other thing is, as you mentioned, being able to go to the NDA meetings and talk through with our neighbors about these comments and being able to, share information like that.
Well,
which
like
I
we
think
brought
would
up,
be
to tell the
helpful.
story behind it, because to everybody else, it's just words on a piece of paper, and they look at it and they interpret it, no matter, they just see a few words, they interpret it a certain way, but they don't know any of the backstory to any of what, or even what that means. Some of the stuff, I don't even know what it really means either, so.
That was the comment at the joint session. Adam, I think, brought this up, but the way I interpreted it was that we needed to tell the story about how we got to this point in the process with these policies. It needed a better explanation. So I think that's critical.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll be working on all that.
I did take a little bit of a stab at that, some of that, and, my notes, but.
Oh, there we go.
Cool.
Maybe you should read it, Denny.
I know.
Take it home tonight.
Just came in today.
Are you going to a concert after this?
I've got still I got 2.5 hours, right?
Right, I know your wife isn't watching. You told her you're going to be home at 10:30.
It's not 10:30 yet.
Send out.
All right.
Okay.
To the rest of everybody.
Okay. So any other commission updates or discussion items anyone has? No? Okay. All right, and we've already gone over our forecast for future meetings. I will just say that I will be gone July 9th, and we are hitting into summer schedule, and so maybe, Alicia hasn't sent out a thing recently to see, but maybe like pulling ahead for...
We have meetings, we have agendas, something on every agenda in June and July. We haven't filled agendas in August.
Okay.
But
So I think just in terms of a quorum situation,
Active on quorum.
we want to make sure we're not all missing the same night if we can.
I refuse to go to Illinois anytime until the corn season hits, which is like September, maybe late August, but so
I don't know about the late August, but
right?
yeah, that's a good rule.
So for you Illinoisans who love to go travel back there in that sweltering, nasty heat and tornado season, go.
I'd sit it out.
Yeah, well,
I will be missing the June 11th meeting.
you'll be missing June 11th, okay. Okay. But yeah, I think if Alicia can maybe just send out a poll and forecast out, like she did a few times ago, I think that's
For
really...
this meeting.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, so. Okay, well, shall we adjourn? Anybody want to?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn.
All right.